Oh, there's a...
Citizens of Earth, gird your loins and open your minds. You have now willfully submitted to the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy. This week it's actually popcorn and supervillainy.
Yes.
Hello and welcome. I am known by many names, but today you may call me the Madhat Katt. If you must speak of me in the third person, please use they, them, theirs, themselves. I also, as we established last week, will answer to my lord, because I am a fancy supervillain. I look forward to sharing all the voices in my head with you, my dear captive audience.
And I am known as Doc Zodiac, mad cult leader, forward-looking visionary, and mixologist extraordinaire. Here to show you light and truth as I perceive it. If you must use pronouns, please feel free to use him, he, or my lord.
Mm-hmm. And joining us from what appears to be, I assume, the home of your latest hostage, a new supervillain, come to investigate our personal brand of supervillainy, Lord Starhawk. Lord Starhawk, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, indeed, this is the abode of my latest willing victim. I do get victims from all around the world sending me letters asking me to take them hostage and live in their homes for free for an undisclosed amount of time. I usually stay until they run out of food. But yes, you can refer to me as Lord Starhawk, Mr. Hawk. Otherwise, if pronouns are to be had, then he, him, they.
Those are all good. I approve all of them. I think I'm probably going to call you Star. Like, it's just going to come out of my face.
Yeah.
We were talking about cartoons a little bit ago. I don't know if you ever watch Star versus the Forces of Evil, but that's immediately what's coming into my head here.
Excellent.
So, in general, what do we do here? We are here to observe, to discuss, to listen, and occasionally make some bloody sense out of this mad world. And I see we have one person who at least has joined us. I don't know who it is, though, but because I don't have chat up yet.
Oh.
I'm still getting used to this whole thing. One of these days, I'll actually get a copy of Windows for that PC that I spent so much time and money lovingly putting together, and I'll be able to use it and effectively run live streams like this.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be a fun thing?
We're actually moving forward into the greater technological beyond. There we are.
Mon Dieu. I hope everyone has had a pleasant and devious week. Thank you for joining us once again. As has long been tradition since, many well-established days ago. 14, I believe, is exact.
Yeah, pretty much.
We begin today's episode with a reading of the party's manifesto. And Star, feel free to jump in on any of those if any of them speak to you in particular. Doctor, would you care to start us off?
One moment. Rule 1. Whenever possible, supervillains must treat others with kindness, civility, and respect. One never knows who they might be addressing and what sort of day they've had.
2. Hate is hate and should be directed towards systems wicked and behaviors most foul, rather than toward individual persons and groups en masse.
3. Thoughtful deviation drives progress. Embrace your considerate deviance and let it guide you.
And number 4, your thoughts are your thoughts and can never be taken from you. Your words said out loud and your actions in the world have consequences. Choose your words and actions wisely.
Mm-hmm. And where are we at? I suppose number 5,
Yes.
I suppose, is traditionally what comes after 4. The party will not shun the ignorant, but willful ignorance is a crime of the highest degree, and rehabilitation must either be scheduled with members of the party or performed on the perpetrator's own time. I feel like that's fair.
6, the party, much like Socrates, knows for certain that they know nothing for certain, and reserves the right to refine and amend its manifesto on an ongoing basis.
This is very true, and I still maintain that that is perhaps our most important rule, because things change, knowledge becomes revealed, and sensitivities are refined over time. It's a process, a never-ending process of growth.
With Starhawk and I being children of the 80s, we are acutely aware of this. Yes.
And as again we were talking about earlier, certain things age less well than other things, and one of the things we're actually going to be talking about today, since we are taking a little bit of a break from the hustle and bustle of current events, they might, come up here and there, but for the most part, we're all trying to relax, and as I have titled today's episode, take a break from the madness for just a moment. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is not only media that we have discovered during COVID, but also revisiting media that we have consumed in the past pre-COVID, and if there is anything, if we're having any feelings about that, if we're having any thoughts, and certain things don't age well, and other things you just go, I see how I may have thought that in the past. I'm of a different mind now. I did want to revisit one thing. I don't know that we ever actually answered these questions for ourselves, Dave. But if all three of us would like to answer, and again, Starhawk, you are welcome to answer or not answer, be as mysterious as the shadow of the brim of your hat will allow.
Yes.
We asked these questions to our fine small group of viewers here last week, and some people answered, but I don't think that Doc Zodiac and I answered. So the first one was, and I suppose this is if you are the anime or animation watching sort, but if nothing else, I feel like you could pull a Disney movie that you saw when you were a kid. We all saw Disney movies as a kid. What anime/animation was most formative in regard to who you are now? I'm going to ask you to kick it off again, Zodiac, while I share a link here.
Okay. For me, I'm thinking about it. There is a anime called Castle in the Sky. It's a Miyazaki. Excuse me. A friend of mine introduced me to it, and I was absolutely blown away by both the tone and the feel of it, because it was kind of like what I always wanted Disney films to be. It was a sense of wonder all the way through it, with moments of terror to remind you that adventure really does actually equal a certain degree of risk in your life. So that one was definitely the one that took me from being a casual fan into, wait a minute, this is actually much, much more than I thought it was.
There's so many layers. Not to mention that it's just beautiful. The
artwork in that is absolutely staggering. One of the things I'll have to see if I can find the picture I took of it, but at the last Anime Nebraskan, somebody showed up and had made an articulated costume of one of the robots from Castle in the Sky.
Wow.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I'll see if I can find the photo. We can post it somewhere. Now then, Lord Starhawk, how about you?
For me, looking back, I'd have to say that the animated Dungeons and Dragons cartoon has got to be one of the ones that I still hold dear to me now, even though I've gone a few decades, several decades, and it's just full of wonder and silliness and Dungeons and Dragons, and how can you ever go wrong with that? But at the time, I'd say, and this is where what you had said earlier comes into play, of things that just don't hold up anymore, is G.I. Joe.
Yes.
Just that was a lot of fun back in the day, but I don't think I could revisit it. You know, but and now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
Was that something that was actually said on a cartoon, or was that like one of those little in-between bumpers that they did like right before they got back to the show after a commercial?
It was a little tidbit side note that they would do like halfway through, where they would you know, one of the Joes would encounter some kids being mean to another kid or something like that. It was a, you know, moral of the story kind of thing, and they explain to them, you know, what the deal was with it, and they'd be like, "Well, I never knew that." Well, now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
I don't know if either of you have seen any of the little Steven Universe shorts that they did in collaboration with, I want to say Dove. They have a particular foundation that's like anti-bullying, and, you know, self-acceptance, embrace the diversity of beauty in the world kind of thing. I can't think of the actual foundation at the moment, but the last one that they did features Garnet, like basically doing exactly that, jumping down into the playground from the sky and going, "Hey kids, racism is bad, don't do it." And then they kind of like turn it on its head, and they have like this little side conversation. It's like they're on set having that conversation while it's being filmed. I think they kind of do that with every one of those shorts, and I think that's kind of a neat way of like, yes, here is like the actual message we want to get across. We do realize like it's a little cheesy, but you know, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any meaning. Like, you know, there's still good that you can take from this and things that you can learn from it. I think they're really cute.
Nice.
So I'm gonna cheat like I always do and not choose one thing. I'm gonna choose. I can't pick favorites. I absolutely cannot. And but as far as like formative, I would say, I think. Okay. I'm pulling an inquisition here. Three things. And I swear that's it. Okay. One
three things.
One is an anime, one is an animated series, and one is like a collection of animated shorts. So first one, we'll start with the anime, Tenchi Muyo. It wasn't the first anime that I ever watched. The first ones I ever watched were Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, and Inuyasha. And I discovered Tenchi Muyo a little bit later, but I still feel like Tenchi Muyo was the most formative out of all of those. And I don't know if it was just the crazy, wacky hijinks aspect of it, but then also like these epic space battles, and how in some odd way they both coexisted perfectly in this one thing. And I don't know, I feel like that's very central to the person I am today. And kind of on the same note as that, the animated series is Batman the Animated Series. I still love to go back and watch that. I know not everyone is a fan of the Dark Knight Batman, but I always felt like Batman the Animated Series was like my perfect Batman and my perfect Joker. And it got even better when Mark Hamill got to still inhabit that character in a film where he could swear with The Killing Joke.
Yes.
Holy shit. Yes, that's what I've been waiting for all my life. Like the actual gritty dangerousness of the Joker from the Christopher Nolan series, but Mark Hamill's voice and physicality and look. That's my Joker. And then third one, just kind of collection of cartoons. Like people who have watched videos or listened to podcasts that I've been on, the grossness of 90s cartoons is just one of my favorite things in the whole world. And I love that that's kind of been making a resurgence in certain things. Like absurdity is back again. And like the hyper close-ups on things where like, you know, it's a booger here and a nose hair there and like dust and a fly going off. Like it's just fucking disgusting. The grossness of 90s cartoons.
Is that like a Ren and Stimpy kind of reference there?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Ren and Stimpy and again, just cartoons. It was like Cow and Chicken, and I'm pretty sure one of the animators on Ren and Stimpy were responsible for Cow and Chicken. What were you saying about Invader Zim?
I was saying, does Invader Zim count? Because that definitely fit right into there. And I would love to have been I would love to be a fly on the wall of that pitch meeting where somebody walked in and said, hey, there's this guy, he has a graphic novel series called Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Let's give him a kid show. And the guy who's the executive producer is sitting there, you know, ripping out a line of cocaine roughly about as long as a ruler, going, yeah, sounds great, let's do that. You know, that is the only way that show could have possibly have happened. Keep in mind, it's an all-time favorite of mine. It's just, to this day, I don't know what genius thought, yeah, let's try that.
I'm not mad that it exists. Not at all.
Perhaps Courage the Cowardly Dog would also go.
Yes, that's another one. Which
I want to see a live action version of that.
Oh man, that I'm sure somewhere on the internet there are like rendered versions of what would be a live action Courage the Cowardly Dog, and they are just cursed images.
Cursed film. Yeah.
I want to like run back in the chat because I see people saying things, but I'm gonna plow forward with these questions because we've been meaning to do it. And
yes.
I'm gonna make sure that we do it. I'm being responsible. I'm a responsible supervillain.
Yes. As much as we can be.
What is the furthest you have traveled, geographically or culturally, and how did it change you? Positively, negatively, neutrally?
To me, well, okay, you've heard the ongoing, the truth is that the trip to Berlin definitely changed me because it took me on about a 3-year path that introduced me to a lot of things that I had been looking forward to, and then also introduced me to the somewhat harsh realities that go hand in hand with actually going out on an adventure. So, that trip taught me a lot, and it opened up an awful lot of doors for me, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I've been milking that fucking story now since 2011.
I ain't mad about it. I love the Berlin story.
And end result was it wound up introducing me to the idea that, the world was a much bigger and broader place, and that my Midwestern and Canadian and American upbringing lacked in certain areas that I had to learn a lot more about it. So yeah, that was pretty much the furthest I've gone, and that's pretty much how it changed me.
How about you, Starhawk? Do you need a moment for that one, or do you have something in mind?
I've got something in mind. Actually, a couple of years back, after a few, several traumatic goings on in my life, I decided that I was going to load up the car and drive across the United States. So I did it. I went from Texas to New Orleans, spent a few days there camping out. Then I went to Florida and back up here to my northern state and visited some friends and relatives here. After that, I shot over to Dave, actually, and the most illustrious Dr. Zodiac entertained myself and ourselves with a whole lot of great times. Some wonderful places and people that I was able to meet. From there, headed towards Colorado and down into Arizona. From Arizona, where I saw my brother for about a week, I went up into where did I go? Roswell. See, they're trying to keep the memory out of it. So yeah, the aliens. I went to Roswell after that and spent some days with some friends in Roswell, and this was probably about a month and a half journey where I camped as much as I could, even in colder areas. I had a bad weather front follow me the entire way. I'm not kidding. It started with horrible rain and storms in New Orleans and in Florida. And then by the time I got to Wisconsin, it started snowing and the weather dropped 20, 30 degrees. I got to Dr. Zodiac's and we were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden we hear the windows start shaking, and the weather, the temperature dropped in about 15 degrees or something like that.
It went from like, you might remember this day, it went from like 88 degrees out to about 45 in the space of about 3 hours.
That was the day I arrived.
Yeah. But I still fed and entertained them because,
yes,
damn it, as a villain, hey, hospitality is a thing. Even if I'm planning on killing you later, I wasn't planning on killing them, but the option's always there.
Won't you join me for dinner? Yes, yes, attendance is required. Yes, you will be strapped down to the chair. But I have standards, damn it.
Yes, I will at least feed you before the torturing and murder begin.
Well, and I'll always RSVP to that.
Yes.
I got to Arizona, and the weather was in the 80s. And after I arrived, it started raining. They got the most snow up in the mountains that they've gotten in a long, long time, and the weather just plummeted there. Then while I was going through New Mexico, they had a freak snowstorm out in the middle of nowhere as well. And unfortunately, that actually ended the life of somebody that was driving next to us between Santa Fe and Roswell. And yeah, it was the craziest thing. Guy was following us, for a couple hours driving on just like straight line, highway between the two major cities. And he passes us up, goes down to a ditch, shoots up in the air outside and flips the car over right onto its top. Turns out it was a rag top, and no, he did not make it. But that definitely, was a strange occurrence. It was that point that I decided it's time to go home. So
I would call that a sign. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely the sign that it was time to return back to Texas and make my decision about which one of the beautiful cities that I visited was going to be my new lair. And it changed me in a lot of great ways. I reconnected with myself, which is really what the journey was all about to begin with. Getting back into who I was, who I wanted to be, and that you really need to love yourself. And after a couple of years of really not, a journey like that, and the people that I interacted with and the things that I saw out there, it taught me again who I was, and that I was worth the love that I should have been giving myself.
Well, that sounds like a fantastic journey. I'm glad that you were able to take it, and that it came to, if I would say, a happy end. If not a happy end, at least quite satisfactory, as Mary Poppins might put it.
Yes.
A resolution more than anything else.
Yes. 7,000 miles not wasted.
Mm-hmm. I very nearly did something very similar to that. About more than half a decade ago now. I suppose it would have been somewhere between 7 and 9 years. I really don't remember. But there were many, just like happened with you, several traumatic things that were kind of turning life upside down. And just, I I kind of had no idea what to do with myself for a bit. And so I was planning on going on something of a walkabout and basically just bussing it and mopeding or motorcycling it. I never quite got my motorcycle or moped. I had an electric scooter that I was like, I could take this on the bus with me, right? But just like buses and trains, just public transport, and maybe some very cautious hitchhiking. We'll see. And I had this whole map for myself planned out where I was going to go down through Colorado, go work on a couple of organic farms there. I think the network still exists, and it is specifically like organic farms that are inviting people to come and work and potentially stay with them, and get room and board in exchange for learning to do some work, specifically doing organic and sustainable agriculture. And then I was going to go, up through Colorado and over to California, up to Washington. And then like the second leg of my trip was going to be through Idaho, and basically just like big areas of nothing. I wanted to have at least half the trip contain not a lot of humans and just a lot of open sky, open landscape, animals here and there. Just so I could have a little bit of quiet, contemplative time before I arrived back in Omaha. Now that trip ended up not happening because I ended up getting a job kind of unexpectedly, and for the time it was a pretty good fit. So the walkabout trip got kind of shelved, but I still have my Google Doc where everything was planned out, and I go back and I look at it occasionally. So the furthest I have traveled geographically, I have technically been out of the country, down to the Bahamas. There is an island called Eleuthera. It's skinny, itty bitty, about 110 miles long, a mile wide in places. And it's one of my favorite places in the world. I've been there multiple times now. And once travel is feasible again, I really, really would like to take a trip back there. It is, I almost want to describe it like a hole in the wall Thai restaurant or a hole in the wall bar that like you just love, and it's not super fancy and not a whole lot of people know about it or go there, but like you've had some of the best times of your life in there, and it feels like it's good because it's kind of off the grid. It doesn't get a lot of press. There are a few like resorty type areas on there, but for the most part, like when you're driving down, there's one road. It's called the Queens Highway. And for the most part, when you're just driving down, it's like jungle for a lot of it. And then a whole bunch of like these abandoned concrete houses. And occasionally you do, there's towns, all along the island, and kind of different vibes depending on what area you're in. Down at the very southern tip of it, there is some more resorty stuff. And at the very northern bit where there's a lot of the pink sand beaches, that's like very celebrity territory. Wow, I can't think of his name. Oh, help me out. Black musician, really cool hair, very interesting fashion sense, rock and roll. Lenny Kravitz. There we
Lenny
go.
Kravitz.
Jesus, Maddie and
I was
Joseph.
picturing Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah,
describing him there.
Yep. That's where he lives. At least for part of the year. this is a dumb thing to share, but like I was this close on one of my trips there to meeting him because I was hanging out with some musicians, and they were into my ukuleleing, and although I think my singing voice is more impressive than my ukuleleing, and I wasn't too disappointed about that, because I'm like, celebrities, I don't know what to do with that anyway. But I've played a couple of different places when we were down there, like, just little bars, and this one little area of the Pineapple Festival, and that was a real heckin' treat. And traveling there multiple times and hanging out with the people that live there, they're incredibly nice and super down to earth. Definitely cemented the like, yes, I am something of a vagabond. Omaha may be my HQ, but I have to keep traveling like for the rest of forever, and meeting new people, and pushing my limits on experiencing new things, trying new foods, engaging with strange new creatures on the beach, and going to just to a jam session with somebody in their completely sustainable dome home. I have a friend down there who is like, well, two of them, just old hippies. And like one of them lives in this dome house where, all the water that's in there is from rainfall. He grows some of his own fruit and veg around the outside of the house. It's solar panels. It's really cool. And like, on the one hand, it felt a little bougie, like, I'm just sitting here chilling out as we, have a few drinks and just play some music and just kind of generally chill, But at the same time, it felt like a very authentic experience. I don't want to overuse that word.
It's certainly the sense that I'm getting from it, though, too.
So our third and final question before we move on to our media discussions here: what was the job/educational situation in which you learned the most, even if it was, so here's how not to do things?
Yeah. For me, I am going to enforce the Madhat Katt I'm going to cheat rule for once in this. Two different ones. One was working for the company Beck & Dickinson, where basically I realized that I love discovering how a process works from front to back. And so much so that it became a running gag amongst the setup guys, who are basically the repair people, and I would eventually join their number for a bit. That if Dave says something is broken, it's broken. There is no midpoint. He has gone through and fixed everything he knows how to do, and now he's turning it over to you. And I learned to basically work prior to that had been a long stream of things where it was all, you were part of a function. And you didn't really learn a lot about how what it was you did worked in a practical sense. And the second they gave me the opportunity to do that, I was all over it. The other one is basically when I started taking classes for my photography/film degree, because I discovered, wow, this is a process and I freaking love it from front to back. I love sitting down and mapping out shots and shooting models or putting together scenes. But I also love walking into a dark room or sitting down in front of Photoshop. It's a moment where you literally are given all the control over something, and it's pretty much, your imagination is pretty much your only limit if you develop skill sets to go hand in hand with it. And then later going to work for Metro Community College and working with students, where I was like, no, wait a minute, I really know stuff. I can like help people. Okay, let's do this. And as much as it might not seem like the most villainous things, you do meet the most interesting people hanging around the college. And some of them have skill sets that you can borrow and put to use for your evil plan. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, those things were definitely the key parts that actually got me moving and focused.
Very cool.
Very cool.
All right.
Starhawk, do you have a thought on that arena, or do you need a minute?
Nope, I'm good. I immediately think of the leatherworking apprenticeship that I took on in Texas with my good friend Jesse, who is an amazing leather worker. I learned more than I think I've ever learned about any specific subject in the time that I spent with her learning leatherworking. And I learned from that leather is one of the best media to work with. You can do anything with it. You can make it look like anything. You can there's just no limit to what you can do with leather, and the fact that it feels good to create something like that, and there's a constant learning curve. There's always something new techniques, and just trying something new and figuring out how to do it and put it together and make it look good. It's very satisfying. It's very calming work. And I realized that that's really kind of the type of thing that I was kind of called to do is work with my hands to create things, in a calm way that other people can appreciate. And, which kind of leads me to the opposite of that. And that's every retail job I've ever had. Had really taught me how not to live my life. I enjoyed some of them, of course. The early days of Radio Shack were fabulous. But everything turns very capitalistic, and eventually becomes such a poisonous type of environment that I had to leave that behind.
That is a sentiment that I can definitely relate to. I think we may have lost Dave. I don't know if his connection dropped. I'm gonna make sure that he still has what he needs. But sure. Real quick, I just want to say
we can't lose him.
I mean, we could try, but he would find us.
Yeah, that is for sure. Yes.
Yes, his internets did in fact drop out. They are being dumb, but he'll be back in a minute as soon as he can.
Oh, good. Okay.
While we wait for him, I am actually going to go and just go tra la 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 through the chat. I don't know if Rick is still here, but even if you're not, hey Rick, thanks for popping in. Good to see you. And Elfie Oaks, I don't know if you're still in the room, but hey, thanks for joining us today. I know it's been a long time since Molly Oblivion and I were doing things on a regular basis anyway. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that such a collaboration might occur again. Because obviously we still talk all the time. We mention each other all the time. And let's see, Han talking about Miyazaki movies. Yes, I know not everyone's a fan. I really love Studio Ghibli films. They are one of my most favorite things in the world. They've got all the layers of the whimsy and the darkness all wrapped up together, and it's very pretty.
What's your favorite?
I told you, I can't choose favorites.
Or if you were to pop one in right now, if you had access to the entire library, what would be the first one that you would probably click play on?
Princess Mononoke right now. I haven't seen that in ages, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because climate change. And that, I mean, almost all of Miyazaki's films, I would say, have like a little bit of touch of like, humans, could you like back off the natural world a little bit? You're kind of encroaching and it's not cool. But Princess Mononoke, like, it's one of the central themes. But also there are just like some very iconic shots, well, not shots, frames, because animation. There are some very iconic frames within that movie that my mind has been revisiting recently. I don't know exactly why. One of them is where, oh wow, I can't think of her actual name at the top, off the top of my head. The wild girl, who was raised by the wolf spirits, wolf gods, wolf demon entities. When I suppose it's basically her mother got shot with one of the humans' rifles, and they're by the stream, and Wild Girl is, putting her mouth to the wound, sucking out, spitting, sucking out, spitting, sucking out, spitting, and then she hears, the snap of a twig or something, or just catches a scent on the wind of the male protagonist, and looks back at him across the stream and wipes her mouth, and there's that bloody smear across her mouth. I've been thinking a lot about that one, and then also just the voice of, maybe Dave can help me remember what her name is now that he's back.
I need some context.
who plays the mom on the primetime show Speechless, and also she is the mom in The Riches, that FX show that also starred Eddie Izzard. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. She's English.
Yes.
Dark Minnie Driver. Thank you, love.
Yeah.
Minnie Driver. Minnie Driver's voice as the leader of that human town, and just the embodiment of progress. God, that was such good casting. I really love how much care and effort goes into the casting of American dubs or at least English dubs of Miyazaki films. Minnie Driver was a perfect choice for her.
Agreed.
Another thing I wanted to mention, or no, you were going to say something, Starheart. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to agree with you on that. I mean, I don't think I've ever, I don't think I can think of any of the Miyazaki films that weren't cast almost perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
It's good stuff.
As I'm going back to the chat here, I also see the mention of the D&D cartoon. While you were talking about that, I was like, I have the DVD of, I think, the first season somewhere in my collection here. It's awesome. Speaking of Molly Oblivion, she and I enjoyed watching that together when we lived in the same house. And the unicorn, the little, like, just floppy, awkward. We love the unicorn so much. And obviously, yes, Dave, sugary breakfast foods with the Saturday morning, absolutely yes. Perfect. Dungeon Master was Caucasian Yoda.
Yeah, he sure was.
Very keen observation there, Han. Let's see here. Scrolling down. Xerxes jumped in for a minute there, I see. He's a long time viewer. Part of the Discord gang. There was one other thing that I saw that really was piquing my interest. Something about Aquaman. I don't know. Han, if you're still in here, fill me in about Aquaman. That was when I was just losing my mind trying to think of the name of Lenny Kravitz. Did you remember the thing, or was I making that up? Did I mishear you?
Me?
I thought Dave said something along the lines of, "Oh, I know what you're talking about," but that
Actually,
may have
when I
been the extent of the thought.
Actually, that is about the same time that the heroes crapped out my internet for a moment. There is I'll look it up real quick because it is one of my favorite kind of chuckle clips ever. H Bomber Guy, in a episode where he was doing a reasoned response to climate change denial, showed a clip of Ben Shapiro saying, "Well, if the seas rise, why wouldn't people just sell their houses and move?" Cut to, and I'll post the video in chat, and we can put it up in the doobly-doo as we see fit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just a wall, and all of a sudden you hear the sound of an axe hitting the wall. And then finally, H Bomber Guy sticks his face through the wall and goes, "Sell the houses to who? Bad fucking Aquaman!" And this
I remember that, yeah.
And this is part of the reason that I absolutely worship a lot of the people in BreadTube. While I may not stand them, I absolutely love the fact that some of the people in BreadTube have that sense of humor.
That something like that was almost the exact conversation I had. Not a conversation exactly. It's like a brief exchange with someone in, oh gosh, I want to say it was like a Hebrew scriptures class when I was in uni. Someone was talking about, they were basically pulling on the bootstraps mentality, and talking about how people who live on islands and they lose everything to the hurricane. It was probably something, an island that's that has monsoon seasons. I don't remember who was particularly hard hit like 4 years ago, but basically saying, well, why don't they just move? Why do we have to send aid there? Why can't they just pack up everything that they own and move to the mainland? Then they wouldn't have to worry about the hurricanes. And as I tried being very gentle about it, because I did not want, as is in the rules, I don't want to shun people for saying things like that. I don't want to, smash through the wall and scream at people, even though it's what I really, really want. I'm feeling it in my heart.
I feel this pain so hard. Yes.
But I was like, well, most people who live on islands actually don't have a lot of money and other material resources that, would allow them to leave the island. People lived on islands for hundreds, if not thousands of years, before the Industrial Revolution, and they had a way to sustain their existence. And then imperialism, not to be reductive about it, but suddenly there was this whole other system that they said, that outsiders basically said, "This is better, welcome." But actually, okay, all right, no, we have to have money to trade now, and it's really difficult to be growing things here that we can eat and sustain ourselves with, because the land is being taken up by other things to accommodate for tourism. Island economics are an entirely different animal than, for, say, the United States. Like, geography is an incredibly large percentage of a person's culture, and the way that they are able to live their life, I don't think I have ever actually heard anyone who is vegan say, that Inuit people or other native groups in the northern regions who mostly subsist on fish and animal fat. I've never heard anyone say, like, well, that's just wrong. They shouldn't do that. Like, there's nothing else to eat. Like, it's that kind of an argument. I feel like people say, like, well, they should just move off the mainland, or move off the island and go to the mainland. Why don't they just do that? I don't know. Why didn't poor disenfranchised Black folks just move out of the ghetto and into the suburbs? I don't know. You should ask them that.
Apparently there's, sitting down and trying to explain the unfortunate economics and logistics of trying to move from areas that are pretty much, going south is, you run into a certain kind of the ignorance of prosperity. I'm doing okay, so everybody else must be doing much the same as well. So if they can do the exact same shit I can, why should I worry about them?
Yeah.
And that's always been something that I sit there and occasionally I get kind of smacked in the face with it, and I have to go, oh, that's right. You're kind of, you have some ignorance on this subject. Let me help you with that.
Well, and a lot of times I understand, like, people aren't coming at it from a from a malicious standpoint. It's just like, well, they should just get their shit together. Why don't they just get their shit together? A lot of times people just are unaware that people exist differently in different places, and it's just different.
Yeah. Different opportunities, different roadblocks,
Well, and different expectations for everyone that lives there too. For a lot of people, like, leaving the island would get in the way of expectations from their families and their communities. Although for some people, like in the Bahamas, and this is something that I saw a lot of in Eleuthera, and part of the reason I really like that it's very in your face there. Like, there's no ignoring that the fact that there is poverty there. It's not like Nassau, where, like, the port you go into, the poor areas of the island are basically walled off, and unless you really venture out there, you're just going to be surrounded by luxury and not realize that there are people working on this island that are coming from other smaller islands who have to send money back to their families, and are living in kind of squalor, even though they're working on, quote, the rich island. Yeah. That was the end of the thought.
Yeah.
We've now that we have Dave back, and I've kind of caught up on chat a little bit. Although, Han, I do want to read your additional comments there. I will give my final answer so that we can talk about we can have our little popcorn media discussions, as today's thumbnail implies. It's hard for me to pick one. I have had so many fantastic failures in my life. I feel like school-wise, nah, I don't want to get into that today. Dave, you know the story of me in massage school, but I'm gonna leave that one. I'm gonna leave that one alone for today.
We'll save that one for another special occasion.
So today, I will say instead. I know I don't usually have a lot of positive things to say about my current place of employment, but I actually have a positive thing to say. I have learned a great deal in the last 2 years, partially because at one point before COVID, I was looking into purchasing the business with 2 of the other employees, and even though it ended up not working out because COVID, there were also, some other reasons that maybe in the end I would have decided that it wasn't the best idea. But just the process of preparing for that, I learned a whole lot about what goes into applying for a small business loan, and how to determine what looking through the metrics and determining whether or not a business has been profitable, and zeroing in on areas that need improvement or that need to be done away with entirely, because it's not just the I have often said that I take a lot of issue with the way that my place of employment is run, because it does not take into account the day-to-day reality of the way that we interact with customers and the way that they interact with us. And that goes for not just things like pricing or expectations or transparency about process and time frame, as far as when you can expect things to be done, but also just clear and concise and consistent practices in regard to COVID safety, as in there was none. Sorry, that was a small negative. So that one is that yes, here is how not to do things. But like I said, even though it ended up not working out, I am still really grateful that I got the chance to look that deeply into it. It is not the first time that I have looked into taking over a business in which the owner was ready to be done with, and I was like, but I like it here. Can I take over so that it doesn't go away? The other time was probably not a good idea either, so I'm glad that I didn't do it. But again, end of the thought. I am going to take a quick break here to go get myself a beverage, but whilst I am gone, feel free to begin the discussion. We are down in our notes now about media that we love and that we have, or media that we've discovered during COVID, that is amazing and we love it. If you want, you guys can talk a little bit about what we all discussed a little while ago. Although maybe you want to save that, and I can just put a link in the description to the episode of Us Three Blokes.
Yeah, I think
once it's actually edited and posted, I'll come back in here and throw links in the description. It's always whenever I say I'm going to put a link in the description, it's always going to be like a couple of weeks before I get to it anyway. So
we understand the feeling intimately. But for the people in the audience who are not aware, Lord Starhawk and I are part of the group called Us Three Blokes. We have a YouTube channel where we review primarily films, but occasionally other media. And this week's film was a film called Assassination Nation, which we all agreed was absolutely amazing, and we really recommend because it's about the entire concept and the realities of mob mentality and some of the thing and the way that it can be directed in some of the most horrifying and terrible ways. And it's a really well put together film. My apologies.
Yep. No, that's okay. And the fact that it was made 2 years ago, and that it mirrors our current situation so closely in some ways. I'm not saying the whole movie, but I'm just saying the mob mentality and down to some very specific details of what we see nowadays in 2020 happening. It's uncanny, and you would almost think that this movie was made in response to some of this year's happenings specifically, but no, it's a fantastic film, and it has big messages and is very thought-provoking.
It's a very big it's a film about a small town, but it winds up becoming about some much larger issues, and it works out to basically to show, kind of the worst of us, and how it is that the worst of us can be brought out when you absolutely positively least expect it. And sometimes the smallest things can send you off into that particular realm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, now that we've even, talked about it and already recorded the episode, I had some other thoughts on some of that, just how it, in parts just shows the self-envelopment that people can have regardless of the situations around them, and how self-focus really kind of I don't know, it just really I think it touches on how self-focus and just being all about your own life, while there's so many other bigger things happening out there, can be dealt with in a much more thoughtful way.
Yeah. So yeah, once we have the episode up, because the Madhat Katt does a guest appearance on the show, and we'll probably do our best to try to drag them into it at some other time as well, because
yes,
their contributions was absolutely amazing.
They will be back next week for sure.
Yeah. But for me, some of the media that I picked up over this whole long length of time, you reach a point where escapism is kind of one of those things that you absolutely positively need. I am a huge fan of the whole ongoing, love that we have now of comic book films and media and stuff. So I had watched the first 3 seasons of Arrow, and then they put out the Teen Titans series, which a lot of people give a hard time, but I kind of enjoy it for what it is. It's a kind of a gritty junk food sort of thing, but the end result for me was that it wound up telling some really entertaining stories. You can definitely tell that they have some issues with budget, and they would like to do some things bigger, but budget is kind of forcing them to do things in a different way, and it's kind of forcing the writers to be a little bit more creative as a result. That and another series called Legion, which I cannot recommend enough. It's basically it's basically set in the X-Men universe, and the son of Charles Xavier and I can never remember her first name, but her last name is Holler. Is now an adult and is every bit as powerful a telepath as Charles Xavier, and also his abilities affect reality in a way, like literally on a primal level. He's ridiculously powerful, but the problem is that he started hearing voices when he hit adolescence, and his mom didn't realize that her child was a mutant. And so they started medicating him and telling him that he was a schizophrenic. So his entire worldview is being shot through this lens of believing that all the things that are happening around you are some kind of like schizophrenic attack. And when it begins to change, that lens, when he realizes that that's actually his reality, that he can change reality, it's still shot through this lens of acquired madness. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's up on Hulu. If you have the app, and also it's also up on Amazon. I highly recommend it. It's really well done.
What was the Teen Titans show that you were? Did I imagine that? I know I was just coming back into. Which one were you referring to?
There's a series. It was running on DC Universe, and now it's been picked up on, I believe, HBO Max has picked it up along with the rest of the DC Universe stuff.
Okay.
And it's called Titans. The casting in it is really good. It suffers from.
I don't know how I missed that.
I've got the first 2 seasons on disc if you want to borrow them.
If only I knew where to find you. Oh, and I do.
And the other part is there were a few scenes in there where people kind of cherry pick them to tear the show apart. But there's a episode at the very beginning where Dick Grayson, who is now no longer Batman's sidekick, but is still Robin, takes on a bunch of bad guys, and he appears and literally all the bad guys start looking up, expecting to see Batman coming down. And Robin just sits there like, you are aware I'm here, right? Like, you know that I'm here. So he just hauls off, he kicks everybody's ass, and as he's walking away, he literally just goes, fuck Batman. And they kind of tore that scene a new asshole, but one of the things that I like about the series is that Dick Grayson is in the process, that he has had a delayed adolescence. He's never really had to be out there and creating his own identity that fits himself. And a lot of his character arc in this is him moving away from becoming Robin and becoming Dick Grayson, the person who would become Nightwing.
Yeah.
Yeah, his casting is really good. Everybody in this show just absolutely knocks me out.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds neat. I will have to check it out. Xerxes, to answer your question, it's not a mason jar, but it is a skull glass. It's very cheesy, but I love it, and it's perfect for supervillainy.
Yes,
of course it is. Yes.
Oh, and one last thing for Titans. S.A. Morales plays the role of Slade Wilson / Deathstroke in there. And he's S.A. Morales. He's absolutely terrifying and he's amazing.
Well, that sounds really cool. And you said it's on Hulu, or no, it's not on Hulu. But you have discs, so
yeah, it's on HBO Max now, and I have the disc. So if you want to borrow season 1 from me, let me know. I'll totally hook you up.
All right. I missed Starhawk. Did you have something in particular that you had shared already?
I haven't shared yet, but I've explored a lot of old media, to be honest. Watched the Buffy series, watched Angel again. I dragged out a lot of, old stuff that I've, been meaning to watch lately. I really am getting into the new Star Trek series, Discovery as well as Picard. I think that they both, are doing an incredible job of stepping out of the box, and I think they're finally realizing that it can't all be so scripted and they have to show the regular life of some of these characters, and I think that that's one of the strengths of both series is that they really explore the personal lives of their crew and how they interact and show why that's so important for their roles on the ship. And they tackle a lot of modern issues. They're being very bold for Star Trek. Well, Star Trek has actually always been pretty bold as far as the first kiss, like between a white and a black person on television, was Star Trek. And and so now we're into just ignoring the norms as far as sexuality is concerned and things of that nature as well. So I'm really enjoying that. Like I said, other than that, I've been watching a lot of movies, stuff that I've never seen before. But I really wish I could say that I've got more than that. Although I'm a huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft, and I definitely have used this last year to dive deeper, if I possibly could, even into his works, and look for smaller details that I've not seen before. I've explored a little bit of doing readings. We've really ramped up us three blokes.
Yeah.
We into something that is I'm feeling real intense about it. It's something that the time has given us affordability with that. So I don't know, just a lot of that same old catching up, I guess.
Yeah, I know that, like, I phrased this very specifically, not thinking about when the question would come back around to me. What media have you discovered during COVID? I don't feel like I've really, like, found any, like, hidden gems. I've been watching a lot more movie recommendations from my friends, and I've also had the time and opportunity to finally watch a lot of movies that one would consider, like, must sees. You can't go through life without having watched X movie. One of those for me was Reanimator. Finally got to watch that within the last year. I can't remember exactly how long ago I watched it, but it was within the last 6 months. And, like, there are so many movies that I am aware of, just because they have bits and pieces of them present throughout contemporary culture, even if it's from something a long time ago. But also, when I was a kid, we had cable in my house, and we had HBO, and there were so many movies that I saw bits and pieces of because that was the movie that was on this month. That's how I saw Thinner, the movie based off the Stephen King novel. Yep.
Great movie.
That's how I saw Moulin Rouge for the first time, I think. Which is odd, because you would think that I would have seen that in theaters. I'm pretty sure that came out when I was, like, of going to the movies with my friends by myself kind of age. I'm pretty sure. But that's how I saw a ton of movies. And so, like, I have, like, the beginning of a movie, or the second 2/3 of a movie, or the very end of a movie very much up in here, but I don't actually know the whole thing, and I've never seen the entire thing all the way through in one sitting. But I've been able to remedy a lot of that in this past year, and I'm very glad about that. And I actually do love it. I know it can be annoying when you have friends who are like, "Oh, stop what you're doing right now. We're gonna go listen to this piece of music. We're gonna go watch this movie. We're going to." I know most people don't say this nowadays, but we are going to stop whatever we're doing and read the passage from this book. And but I tend to like it when people do that, because I'm like, yeah, share the thing with me. I want to see the thing, especially if I haven't seen it all the way through. Yeah, I am racking my brain. I do not think that I can. It's just been a whole lot of, like, okay, I have been trying to watch Sherlock for 8 years. This is going to be the year where I finally get through it. I'm still only on, like, episode 4, because, like, every episode is a freaking movie.
Yeah.
So it's hard to it's difficult to binge. Like, you really have to heckin' commit to that, and if you've got other things going on, like, it's just not gonna happen. So on that note, I'm going to jump to the, like, second half of the questions. Media that we have revisited, like Starhawk, you already kind of touched on this a little bit, and I don't know, the way that I've written it in the doc is, oops, they're either critically not good or, ew, that did not age well. But honestly, yes. Like, those aren't the only two thoughts and feelings that you can have when you're revisiting old media. And even if there are those moments of, like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes we can, depending on the situation and the particular content, sometimes it's more a feeling of, like, yes, I remember when I first read this, watched this, I was around this age, and this was how I was thinking about the world.
Oh.
And now I think about the world in a slightly different way, and it's interesting to compare the two. Either one of you, feel free to start us off.
Dave, Doctor.
Let me see. Things that have not particularly aged well, or again, being a child of the 80s, there are moments when you sit there and watch films that were, at the time, hysterically funny to you, and then you grew up a little bit. There are elements of the one film that has aged terribly. I went back to rewatch it, and I'm like, oh God, so much is problematic. And Animal House. Because there are scenes in there that are hysterically funny, and then there are other scenes that are dependent upon making fun of a lack of consent, or somebody's doing insane shit when they're drunk, or things along those lines. And those are realities, but now that we're back, but playing them for laughs now just kind of feels like a rubber crutch joke. And it makes it really difficult to watch. Or another one of my favorite, just because I love watching the performance somebody does in this. There's a film from the 80s called Bachelor Party, which was a level of anarchy that we all kind of aspired to back then. And the film basically, the film is noted because it's a very early film of Tom Hanks. And I think he just walked in, looked around it, and overpowered everybody in it. His performance is amazing. But there's some transphobic humor in there. There is misogynistic stuff going on. And when you watch it, you're just sitting there going, oh man, there's about a third of this film that I can't feel anymore.
Yeah.
But there are other moments.
That's so true.
But you do realize at a certain period of time that I think this is part of one of the leading elements of the arguments we have in the culture wars, is that there are people who just want to be able to laugh at the stuff they were able to laugh at before. I get it. On the other hand, I've kind of grown past it, and I'm now more aware of the fact that if this was a joke in reference to one of my friends, I'd be fucking devastated. And I kind of have to view it through that lens now. So yeah, although a film that I came back to rewatch that absolutely aged marvelously, we might have to do this just for us three blokes, but I was trying to kind of get the feel of a character study film, and I went back to rewatch Ordinary People, which has aged spectacularly well. And front to back was one of those films I just sat there and went, okay, now I can just sit here and objectively take notes on how Redford did all of this stuff in this movie. so it's not all bad, but there are moments when you do have to remember that the time period that something was created in has a huge impact on what the actual content of it's going to be.
Yep, good point.
That made any degree of sense.
It did.
It did?
Cool.
Yeah, no, oh no, go ahead,
right
start.
Ahead. Okay.
Jinx, you owe me a soda.
All right.
Oh,
I'll be making my way out there eventually. You gotta visit the other villains' lairs. So, Anyway.
It is customary.
Yes. Dave, or I should say Doctor, we visited Monster Squad.
Yes.
On Us Three Blokes. And while it certainly still is a whimsical, movie of kids and monsters and things like that, I was virtually in shock of what I used to think was funny.
Yeah.
It really
solidarity, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. I've watched a number of films over this past year probably that I've looked at and gone, how the hell did I ever find that funny? But I'm glad I feel that way, that I was able to change over the years. This last year has been transformative for me as far as political views, social views, just you name it. it's been an awakening year for me, because when you have so much time on your hands to sit and think about what's going on in the world, and you start to try to justify your thoughts after a while. And then, over the last year, there were so many different processes that I would go through that I don't know how I ever justified. And like Monster Squad was the type of thing at the beginning, just all the talk and the words that are just thrown around like they're nothing. And, just the
on the other hand, some of that,
just
like at the beginning of that film, there is the scene where, one of the kids calls another one faggot. But in the end, that the kid who's dropping, those phrases winds up being on the wrong end of an awful lot of very well-deserved punishment for it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
But there's a moment when you do look back at who you used to be in that context, and you're like, oh man, yeah,
yeah. It's amazing though, stewing in my own juices for the last year has really kind of turned me into a 9-day-old pot of pea soup, which, as we all know, gets better with age. I could have used wine. Why didn't I use wine? Pea soup. I don't know. Anyway, what I'm getting at is
we all have our tastes.
Yeah, there have been a number of movies. I couldn't even just sit and rattle them off. But I think in general, I think media is a very good way to see how you've changed. Because you revisit an old movie that you used to love, and then you just really almost feel sick realizing that you used to really idolize that kind of character, or that that trope of one type of person or another, and you come out of it feeling, wow, I'm really feeling better about the way I'm living my life now, because
see, and that's how I hope most people would like. That's the place that people will come out to at the end of revisiting a piece of media, that they feel is cringy now. Because I would rather that be what it is, rather than it just be like a moment of horror and shame, because I don't shame has its uses. I don't think it's all that useful in order to get us to progress to a place that is less destructive, more productive, is generally how I tend to put it. And generally speaking, I think there's a lot more that can be learned from revisiting things that are problematic, and just kind of sifting through the icky feelings, as it were, and like, well, why do I feel icky about it now versus like before you watch it, you kind of have that moment like, oh man, I haven't seen this movie in forever. I'm gonna pop that in the disc. Yeah, no, this is great. Oh fuck, is that what they said?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Why was this my favorite movie?
Right.
Oh god.
Yeah, it's that realization.
But that initial surge of excitement where you have that kind of emotional memory of something that you enjoyed, something maybe even that like made you feel good about yourself, made you feel big and powerful, only to realize 10, 20, 30 years later that like, actually this was not great. I actually have a thing like that. I watch a lot of old movies, and I mean there are shitty rape jokes and shitty trans jokes all over the place for varying reasons, and I'm of the opinion like, I mean, you can make rape jokes. Should you be the one to make them? And I think that you can ask that for just about any topic of discussion. Like, pretty much anything is up for grabs. You are not always the person who maybe is the best person to be making that joke, because not everybody who tells that joke, if you like take the words exactly, you put it in someone else's mouth, it is suddenly very not funny because of who it's coming from.
Yeah.
And I love, I'm pretty sure it was in Natalie's most recent video, but her saying like, I can't wait until trans people have so many rights that that people can just make fun of us because there's so much to work with here.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that's what I would love. I would love it if everybody had so many rights that we could all just make fun of each other till the end of days. That is the goal. That's why #feminism.
Yeah.
So the piece of media that I'm revisiting right now, it actually just recently started. Danielle Cosetto of Girls with Slingshots started doing this either last year or the year before. I can't quite remember, but basically doing a rerun of the original comic, so that new readers can go through it and old readers can, revisit it and read some new commentary and things with that. And for the most part, strips go unedited. And so for something like Girls with Slingshots that ran for so long, there are a few jokes here and there that are a little not tactful, all the way up to that's actually really insensitive and problematic. But I like that we're able to revisit that and look like, so here's where I was at the time that I wrote this joke. Here's my thoughts on that now. I'm not asking anybody to forgive me. I don't think I need to be, or if they do actually feel the need, I think sometimes, it can be said like, actually, I would like to apologize for this thing. I feel it's warranted. But one that's started up in a similar fashion is a webcomic called Go Get a Roomie. It is full of boobs and beer and hippies, and I've been a big fan of it for a long time. It's by a person called
already.
Yeah, you had me at boobs
and beer.
Boobs and beer. It's I think the tagline on it used to be like life, love, and boobs. So it centers around this character who is known as Roomie, short for like roommate, because she's this lesbian hippie who basically just like wanders from house to house. She doesn't have a job, she doesn't have a home, and she just like stays somewhere new pretty much every night. And if there is a pretty lady who lives in that place, chances are good that she's going to sleep with said pretty lady. And starting at the very beginning of the comic, there are over time, and again, this is another comic that ran for a really long time. I want to say it was either 8 or 10 years. Clove has been making some commentary like, Clove has evolved in some of their thinking, and it's reflected in the comment. Like in the very beginning, Roomie is straight up an alcoholic. Like she is using alcohol to avoid thinking about things that she does not want to think about, and she gets herself in a lot of really unsafe situations. And like in the beginning when you're reading it, it's like, yeah, this is fun. And then you kind of think about it and you sit with it for a while. And for a series that's been running for basically a decade, you do kind of start to think like, actually, maybe this isn't the healthiest lifestyle, really. We don't want bad things to happen to you. And I love it when webcomics can go to that place. Like when I was first starting out as a writer, as an artist, these were the things that were fun and cool, and here's what I did to get laughs. And looking back retrospectively years later, as we're still exploring some of the same themes, I have more knowledge and different perspectives that I've gained from getting to know more people over the years who are closer to said topic, and suddenly it's different. Suddenly it's different, and I have different things to say about it. And I'm really looking forward to just going through the rerun. Her art also has really changed a lot in the past decade. And
it's kind of the social
I'm going to
version
have
of-
to double check myself. I can't remember if Clove is currently going by she or they or both or any. But in any case, it started like hyper tiny waists and very scritchy scratchy, and eventually went to digital, and everything became much more like curvy and artsy. And then in the end days, it kind of went back to more of a hand-drawn style, and it was almost sort of a blend between where it began and where it shifted to in the middle years. I interrupted someone who was going to say something. Say the thing.
The thing I was going to say is that it's interesting when you've got a piece of work that goes on for a long, long period of time, because it kind of becomes the equivalent of the pencil marks on the wall of watching your child grow, except in this case, it's watching somebody's capacity both as an artist and as a person growing up. There's a few book series that I read, and you can see, I'm going to pick on Jim Butcher for this one, not because I think that Jim Butcher is necessarily bad, but because you can definitely read his first book and his latest book, and you can see his progression as a writer. But he's also been writing, the same series now since, the early 2000s, I think. And to me, the idea, I think that would be kind of interesting to artistically sit there and go, look, there's going to be some stuff when you go into my back catalog that is really fucking cringy. As a matter of fact, just thought of an example of this that came up fairly recently. I was talking to my cousin Ian, who pointed out that there's a song by the edited BC, and the right wing jumped.
Could you repeat that one more time? I think you dropped out for half a second there, and I missed whatever the name was.
There's a song by a group, the Pogues, that got edited.
And then, of course, it happens again.
Yeah. Got edited. Which part did you miss? The band name?
I heard the Pogues.
Okay. It got edited by the BBC for play because there's a LGBT slur in the song. And so some conservatives came out saying, oh my God, it's political correctness gone mad. And they contacted Shane McGowan. Yeah, they contacted Shane McGowan about it. And he said, you know what, I have no objections to this. And you guys can all just sit down and shut the hell up, because that song was written in 1987. It's now 2019. If you think I haven't grown as a person since then, why don't you all just shut the fuck up? And to me, I think that Shane stood up and said, I might argue about my stuff being censored, but under this point, you know what? In this case, I really don't have an issue with it, and I'm the guy who wrote it. And to me, sometimes you sit there and think to yourself, okay, I'm looking at, I went back and reread some of the stuff that I wrote 20 years ago, and I'm like, oh man, both as a writer and for the subject matter. But when you have a long-running piece of work, it becomes a document of your progression, both as an artist and as a person. And if you can approach it that way, it's really interesting to see how some people progress.
And I did have one other comic that I was going to refer to that kind of I revisit this one in my head all the time. Warning to any younger viewers: this is an NSFW comic. Please don't go look it up. I don't want your parents emailing me. But it's an adult manga called Bondage Fairies, and
I've heard
it
of
was one of the first porn comics that I ever found because I was a horny little shit.
Adolescents will do that to you.
And a total weeb. Let's be perfectly honest. And I remember really liking it, and it was super cute, you know. Oh yeah, they're fairies, and they're the cops of the forest, and you know, they have all kinds of crazy hijinks adventures with woodland creatures and insects, and you know, oopsie doopsie, there's some sex in it.
Yeah.
But then going back and reading it like 10 years later, I so rapey, so rapey. As much hentai is,
Yeah.
and it sucked because the first time that I had like I recommended it to somebody like 7 or 8 years ago, and then I went back and actually read it because I had I still have a whole bunch of CDs with like all the files on my high school laptop burned onto it, and that's one of the things that's on there is the entire collection of bondage fairies. I went back and I was like, ah, yeah, I remember this. Oh no. Shit, do I have her number? Don't read that. Just kidding. I didn't mean to recommend such a piece.
Prank call.
But another thing where what you were talking about, like when something runs for so long, there is no way to avoid it becoming a chronicle of who you are as a person and what's going on in your life and what's going on in the world. It's impossible. And even though I have thoroughly scripted this video, I have not begun shooting it because it's kind of a really in-depth topic and I want to do it justice. But it touches on my disappointment with David Mamet after having read American Buffalo for the first time, because I was directing a scene for one of my directing classes, and I had to do a show Bible for the whole for the play. Sorry, I'm backing up. A show Bible is basically looking at the piece of literature in question, but then also looking at the rest of the author's body of work and the time that they were writing in, you know, who their audience was, what was available to them at the time. And I remember just having such profound disappointment and like almost kind of a betrayal of this imaginary parasocial contract of someone that I had suddenly developed a little bit of admiration for, because in American Buffalo, it's very, there's a whole lot of commentary on the decaying or the decay of ethics that comes along with unfettered capitalism. And then he just did a whole heckin' 180, and he is now like the ultra unfettered capitalism fanboy, and early last year called Donald Trump a great president, and it was like, again, just taken aback, deep sense of betrayal. How could you do this to us? But you know, people are free to go about their own way, whatever. And I was kind of drawing parallels between those feelings that I had back when I was first discovering David Mamet and a lot of the feelings that people are having. I started writing this video last year, and ContraPoints has now done the video on J.K. Rowling, and I'm just going to be a hack now if I try to follow up with anything. But the feelings that people were having about JKR's tweets and then the essay that she came out with, and just the whole conflict of it, like it goes deeper than separation of art and artist, and whether or not they can be enjoyed separately, and whether or not once it's out in the world, if it even belongs to that person anymore. I mean, that's a whole thing, but just the feelings that people were having, like they felt this very deep personal betrayal of that. I felt that very similarly, and more recently, and now we go back with the tendrils of the story octopus to what I was originally saying, body of work, long span of time, the webcomic Sinfest by Tetsuya Yoshida. I have not read any. It's been almost 2 years now since I have been up to date with that, and that is a comic that has been going since the early 2000s. That was the first webcomic I ever read and kept up with on the regular. And as far as I know, it's still going. And for years and years and years, never missed an update every single day of the week for years, more than a decade. And then eventually on Sundays, there came to be these beautiful full-page strips in full color. There was usually limited to no actual dialogue. It was just all visual. And his art just, not even improved. It just grew so much, and it became such a thing of beauty. And I would look forward to those full-page strips on Sunday. Just because of how beautiful they were to look at. But then at one point, about maybe like 8 years into the comic, he kind of started to re-examine some of his own thoughts and feelings, and maybe even trying to kind of sift through some guilt that he felt about how he had thought of women in the past and how he had treated them, and absolutely how he was treating them in the comic. Which, if you go back, there's some sexism and some misogyny woven into all that, and some interesting, to say the least, like very quick moments that had some kind of tasteless racial humor. And I mean, there's something to be said for a person of color making racial jokes rather than a white person making racial jokes. Although I guess we have to assume, I suppose I don't have to assume. I assume Tetsuya Yoshida is not just some white guy. He might be culturally American and maybe culturally white, but I feel like someone can't have gone that long with a Japanese name like that and secretly be white. Sorry, that's a whole other fucking tangent.
I am not even going to try to dip my toe in that one. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, over time it became obvious. He started introducing these characters from what he called the sisterhood, and it was basically like these little girls who were part of the feminist uprising. And when they were first introduced, they were the very first one of them was basically just like a female version of the main character, Slick. Like same hair, same shades, except in a ponytail, like same basic body type and outfit. Over time, she develops a little bit more of her own personality. But in the very beginning, she was very much the straw person of feminism. And but then over time, like he was clearly becoming radicalized in a good way. A lot of people is like, well, now he's just getting preachy and he's getting sucked into political correctness. That's not what it looked like to me. What I saw was someone who was looking back at years and years and years of work and suddenly kind of not feeling so great about some of the things that he had drawn and said. And he continued to explore that through the comic itself. I thought that was amazing, and I just loved it all the more. Never mind that I was like, but also it is ragging on capitalism and the patriarchy, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing to me was that just it was so self-reflective, and to be able to look at that entire body of work and look at where he had come and gone, it was amazing. And then it very slowly, to some people it was more obvious than others. It took me quite a while, basically to the point where it was really, really explicit. It started to venture into swerfy territory. So, very anti-sex work, which is a brand of feminism. There can never be any ethical sex work because it's always coercive. That's one point of view on it. And then it got into turfy territory where, and the annoying thing is trans men were never mentioned, and non-binary people were eventually mentioned, but it was AMAB people. It was people who were assigned male at birth that were, calling themselves non-binary, to be special or to, invade women's spaces. And it was the same thing before. And it's like, I kind of just had to come to the realization, like, man, you have gone to such a weird fucking place. And it was damaging my own thoughts about myself and about other people. And I finally just had to put it down and say, I can't keep reading this. It's hurting me. And I don't want to direct anyone to your website and potentially benefit you, have you benefit from it financially. It's just so, it was really, really disappointing. And also it became so clear. Sorry, this is my last thought on that. It just became so clear that, like, he had gone from one end of the spectrum of being like sexist and misogynistic toward women, toward women can not only do no wrong, but they only exist as either pretty and young and thin, or old and grandmotherly, or like vampy and ultra powerful. And there was just nothing in between. Like, I have never seen him draw a female character who was anything other than young and pretty and thin, or old and matronly, or vampy and ultra badass. And it just became super clear that he had gone to the dark side, and not the good one.
No.
There were no cupcakes to be had in that dark side.
Jeez.
I mean, look,
it's got to be cupcakes.
I mean, you've got to do, if you're going to be switching sides, you got to do your research. Don't switch to just the polar opposite of the side you were at. That's just bipolar disorder. No, make an informed decision where you can sit there and go, wait, and I get cupcakes with it? All right, now it's not my dark side. But I think that's the risk that you take when you have been doing something for a long, long period of time. You reevaluate yourself, and there's this feeling of trying to do a massive overcorrection as a result of what you did before.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that overcorrection can lead you to being influenced by people whose agendas match where you're going with that correction, but they really are, they're very specific in what it is they want and what they want you to do. I'm not in that situation, but it's the best guess that I can make. I mean, but at the same time, you take a look at, I was joking around with somebody in the chat earlier about taking a look at, as progressive as the original Star Trek series was, let's just take a moment to discuss the uniforms that female crew members were wearing. Yeah, the micro skirt thing was, and then we kind of grew out of that. But then it even translated into, in the next generation, with Troy's uniform in relation to everybody else.
Or in Voyager, 7 of 9.
7.
Yeah.
With her like all in one piece wedge pony heels.
Although
that were just part of the unitard.
Yeah. If you haven't seen her in Picard yet, yeah, they got away from that, and they got away.
I was just going to say,
because now she's wandering through, and she is an ass-kicking, hardcore. She's basically doing her best to help to protect all of the former board, but her outfit that she wears is totally functional, absolutely works for the character in and of itself, and doesn't fit that. But I think there's also, there's something about the silvery spacesuit crowd that we had to kind of get away from the 50s and 60s. And it's beginning to show a little bit, but yeah, occasionally I look back at some of the media that I enjoyed, especially in science fiction, and just kind of like, yeah, about that. I'll be back in just a moment. Continue on. I'll be back in a second.
Well, and of course, like, there is a time and a place for skimpy, impractical outfits.
Yes.
There are plenty of great, like, retro space themed comics that I have read over the years on Filthy Figments, and what's the other one? Slipshine. I'm talking about a lot of porn this episode. But it's drawn porn, so no one was harmed in the making of this porn. I know for certain because it's drawn. I think that's one of the major reasons that I like it so much. It's like my preferred method, preferred medium for that genre. But like, that's a good place for the skimpy, impractical outfits. But of course, like, I don't know that we would necessarily have them if those had at one point been like kind of the norm for what, you expected to see on something like Star Trek, the original series, or something like Charlie's Angels, not space themed, but,
sure. Yeah. And that's always been the case with Dungeons and Dragons related types of things, where the barbarian women wear a little bit of chainmail over the not so public bits, and there's this great group on YouTube called Viva la Dirt. And they have a few episodes that they've done making fun of the whole, skimpy Red Sonja type outfits and.
Red Sonja.
Yeah.
There's another movie that I saw a long time ago on HBO at 5 a.m. when I was supposed to be asleep.
Those outfits actually created one of my favorite unofficial rules in a role-playing game. In the GURPS role-playing system, it started with their special ops game, but then they translated it out into a couple of other things. But basically the idea was bulletproof nudity. For each piece of clothing that you take off, you gain 1 to your damage resistance, which was to explain why it is that somehow John Rambo never manages to get shot by fucking anybody.
Pretty impressive.
And I begin to think that there's something about that in fantasy armor, where the less that a particular character is wearing, well, then the more their overall damage resistance goes up just as a result of that. It's all those weak fools in plate mail. Those guys are all going to get killed.
They really got to learn to be, just striking poses on the battlefield where both their pecs and their ass are in frame. Yes, you are going to have to break your spine a little bit to do that, but it's going to benefit you overall, because it's going to be really a lot harder to crit hit you with that.
See, I always took that as like a a charisma bonus to your AC. Sure, you're only wearing a half a pound of chain link, but but it adds enough to your charisma that you get a huge AC bonus.
Just kind of sitting there, or you might actually be able to have the capacity to cause one of your attackers to lose a turn When they're sitting there and go, oh, nice. Yeah, I think.
So I mean, in some ways, it does make sense, but
yeah,
you know,
practical. I love the design concepts that go with an awful lot of like Frank Frazetta, Boris Viejo art, because hey, it's all pretty and I enjoy it. From anybody with half a brain takes one look at that and goes, that is about as practical as wearing a Dixie cup as a nut cup. It's just not going to work.
Right. Well, and because chainmail pinches those little not so public bits really badly. I mean, you don't just wear
just chainmail.
Yeah, no, God.
Dragon mail, on the other hand, that's a little bit different. I personally own a dragon mail brassiere top that I got at KC Ren Fair several years ago. You made me think of something though. Like that's not practical. It made me think of the shotgun under the armpit comment that I brought up earlier. I can't take credit for that. I don't. It's been 14 years since I've fired a shotgun, so I don't remember anything about it.
Except that when you pull the trigger, you're going to remember it.
You don't want the recoil right there. You don't want that. That's not great. But like, I was like, why are people commenting on? Or forgive me, folks in the room. Why are men commenting on this when they're not commenting on the impracticality of the booby armor?
Yeah.
I call bullshit.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, look, I love looking at the pretty ladies in the booby army too. Okay. Or the booby armor. I said booby army. I would like to join the booby army, please.
I would like to be a senior NCO in the.
But we've got to be consistent here. Are we going to suspend? Where are we going to suspend our disbelief to? And what are we going to complain about because we're nerds?
Yes, I'm signing up for a support position in the in the booby army.
We'll handle the logistics of the booby army for you, and we'll be okay.
I asked for your villainous consent.
I'm so glad that we invited you on.
Welcome to our strange little madhouse. I think we're going to get a reinvite.
We're coming up on 2 hours here, and as much fun as I'm having, I do need to get some food, and I feel like 2 hours is pretty long as it is. I do want to just scroll through the last bit of chat real quick just to see if we've got any little gems in there. Mandy was really good. I haven't actually gotten to see that yet, Xerxes. But I do want to watch it. Like, I want to watch it, and
watch party.
I have kind of kept my ears away from anyone else's opinions so that I can approach it fresh.
John and I's opinion are that it's amazing, and that if you have Shudder, we can watch party this shit. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it can be watch partied.
Let's see here.
I was on a streak for a while there with my suggestions, I think.
Yeah, the Shudder.
Yeah, when we were cycling through our suggestions for movies, I hit on a few good ones there for a while.
And then every now and again we pull one out and it just kind of tanks, and you're like, "Oh, okay, that just kind of had to happen, I guess."
Yeah.
Hey, every now and again, it's good to watch bad movies to gain some perspective.
That is why it all.
Although even with truly terrible movies, I have a hard time saying like that was awful. There was nothing about it I liked. Everyone who was involved in that movie should be exiled to an island forever, because I'm just like, but they worked really hard on it, and it was a lot of work and time and money. And I can't help but remember just all the production pieces of it that are behind the scenes. I have a hard time hating things.
I understand. There's certain films I just sit there and I'm like, you have to sit there and go, The Room is not a very, very good film. But you know what? The Room is actually a finished feature film, so you got to give him credit, because finishing a feature film is a nightmare.
Exactly.
Especially, I mean, he had a few bucks, but he did not have Hollywood bucks to do that. and the Madhat Katt has been helping me with a basically no budget project that I've been on for a while, and we can both testify.
It's gonna happen.
It will happen.
Good.
But especially because I inadvertently wrote the main character as basically Madhat Katt without realizing it.
Isn't that funny how that happens?
Sometimes these things work out. But trying to do something with literally no budget, wherever my budget is basically, hey, everybody, I bought coffee and McDonald's breakfast sandwiches. Let's go. Teaches you an awful lot about just how much hard-ass work goes into making a film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Han, you were commenting a little bit on Sinfest earlier and Tat, and yeah, the self-righteous aspect of it. I know that people were starting to say that long ago when he first introduced the sisterhood. It definitely got to a point, and as I looked more into it, researching that video that I am desperately trying to finish scripting so that I can make it, it was becoming much more clear how insular his thought process was getting, just by who he kicked off the forums for that webcomic. And he specifically even stated in one of his very rare public updates that, it was going to favor a radical perspective over a liberal one. And back when he first said that, I was like, yeah, because I was, growing a little disillusioned with the concept of liberalism as it was back in, let's say, the early 2010s. And yeah, it's gotten, it went to a disturbing place, and it makes me very sad. And I will be interested to see, I think at some point, like when I feel a little bit safer, mentally speaking, I will want to go back and read through the rest of the archive. I don't know if he's still going or not. I assume so. And just see where he goes with it, because I'm interested to see, will he eventually kind of swing back to a little bit more of an equilibrium? I don't know. And yeah, Slick was always kind of a pathetic, laughable character. And at a certain point, I was kind of sad for Slick, because like it became the comic became almost entirely focused about telling Slick, you're not the only character here that exists in this world. Other people exist, and not only your perspective exists. I'm like, okay, Tat, I get you're going through some stuff. It's cool, man. But it seemed like it kind of evolved beyond that, and then it went to a weird place. Skimpy outfits, yes. And then we got to the booby army. Forums were awful, and we're basically on the verge of advocating violence towards certain groups.
Did somebody say booby army again?
I was just catching it. We were coming full circle. It always comes full circle with the booby army.
I didn't want to miss anything.
I was like, so I'm just kind of wandering around booby army. I'm back.
Well, I have no further thoughts. I was a bad kid and did not write 3 new questions like a good YouTuber should for the small but indeed still captive audience. I'll put some up on the Discord once I have a break. It's been really ridiculous at work. Although there's my final thought, because it's a secret. I'm going to be talking to my employer tomorrow when I go into work, and I'm going to be saying I'm going down to 1 day a week. And if that's not okay, that's cool. I'll just be going away then. So either way, however that shakes out, I will be having a lot more time, to be devoting to my coding studies, and B, to be working on things like this, things that actually make me want to get up in the morning.
I can understand that.
I'll be
Hopefully
happy.
that wasn't like super loud. I'm
I'll
going to go
be back
back
there.
when I'm editing this movie and it's just going to be...
Well, I'm happy to be whatever help I can possibly be. So if y'all ever need anything, you know.
Yeah, no, Starhawk, we would thank you so much again for being here today, and I really hope that you will join us again in the future.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
Dave, even though this is only the officially second episode, we've been doing this for 3 weeks in a row, and I would just like us to take a second to congratulate ourselves, because we have been doing the thing, and we've been doing it consistently, even if we have started a little bit late every time. We started on time one time. I remember we did, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it was last week.
I would actually like to thank Starhawk and Daniel from Us Three Books, because they basically forced me to be on a schedule. And then I went, hey, wait a minute. Well, if the Madhat Katt and I are going to do something, well, then we're going to sit down and there will be a schedule. And when we do this, we will actually show up.
Heckin' wow.
Yay!
We're doing the thing. Well, and see, now we're going to have to see, now that we're at the end of the month, we're going to have to come to this decision if we want to keep up another month subscription of StreamYard, or if we want to try out a different service just to see what it's like. There are one or two other ones that I think might be worth trying.
Okay, we'll take a few minutes to examine our options.
Yeah. I think, technically speaking, we have another week or two as far as, like, before I get charged again. Once I come up with whatever those mysterious questions are, I will put them in the Discord on my channel, or rather on my channel's Discord. And I don't think I currently have it in the video description, but I'll put a link to the Discord in the description. Starhawk, you're welcome to join us there. It's mostly a lot of media recommendations and, like, look, cute things. But then occasionally, you know, we talk about other things. It's been pretty, like, dead for the most part for the majority of its life. It has slowly becoming more active as I become more mentally and emotionally available to do such things.
It's funny how that works.
I love cute stuff, so hey, that's great.
I know, but I'm feeling really good about the Party for Prosperity, or in today's case, Popcorn and Supervillainy, that Dave and I are doing. I am in a really good mood from having been involved in that film review earlier, and you know, I feel hopeful about life.
Yay!
And that's always a positive right there.
And that's an interesting feeling to feel, right? So I hope that you all can have a feeling of hopefulness about the future, and you should take that into your weekend. That is your goal for the weekend, to find a moment where you can be hopeful and, if at all possible, happy. Do a thing that you love. And if you have to do a thing you hate, it's going to be okay, because you won't have to do the thing you hate forever. Nothing is forever.
That's a really awesome
life take.
Yeah.
So there's a word here. I'm not sure what it is, but it's very that.
But I liked it. I really liked it.
Yeah.
I'm going to carry that one too.
I try to end things on a positive note, if at all possible, even if we talked about super heavy subject matter and things that made us feel a little icky. I like us to come away from it feeling hopeful, and if, like, you can't be positive all the time, that's totally okay. If you feel crappy, you're allowed to feel crappy. I just want you to know that it will not be forever. You will feel other things. There are so many things to feel in life. Everybody, please have a fantastic weekend. And remember, you have committed to 13 secret acts of kindness in order to dismantle the system's wicked. That's part of watching That's part of watching this show. I'm sorry.
You got to do some good stuff, just as a matter of principle. Break things up a little bit, see how it works out. So that way, when you come around to destroy your enemies, you got a little positive karma coming your way.
It's all part of our super villainous plot.
Yes.
All right, I'm hitting the end button. The end
All right.
has come. Bye-bye.
Good night.